As an American, what rights do you actually have? Do you actually have the right to property? Do you own property? I would say no. In its strictest sense of property ownership, you do not actually have property ownership. Because unless you pay the taxman rent, or my other term for it would be an extortion fee, then the taxman, the state, will come and take your land. Therefore, I argue that it's never really your land in the first place. You have the right to vote, but what use is such a right, and under what conditions do you actually have this right? I mean, after all, if you're convicted with a felony, which becomes increasingly easy nowadays, can you vote? Right? And also, why would you want to vote? You're having to pick the lesser of greater evils when you're voting. So, you're having to pick between your flavor of political puppets who are not really serving your interests, but the interests of those who have already bought them out before they get into office. So they've been bought out by the corporations, they've been bought out by the elite, those who really run the show. And no, this is not some Illuminati conspiracy theory. I'm just saying that those who have the money really run the show, because they have the power to pay people off and to spend millions of dollars in contributing to campaigns for politicians, and also to lobby for their personal is-to-bes, their interests. So you have the right to vote, but what good is it? What good is it if all you have to choose from is paid liars? Because that's exactly what a politician is in American democracy. Representative democracy is not really a democracy. You're voting people in to make decisions for you. You're trusting that they will make decisions in your best interest. So I don't really think that American democracy is actually a real democracy. And I don't think that democracy equals freedom, because the majority in a democracy has the right to vote away other people's rights. So while people in the majority wouldn't physically come into your house and take your property or take your rights, they have no problem, or take your money or take your paycheck or your funds or your hard-earned money. They have no problem, they won't do this themselves, but they have no problem with having the state do it for them. So then one could ask the question is, if people are willing to do this, are they really your friends? Now, do you have liberty when it comes to your constitutional rights? Again, I think this all comes back to money. If you have the money to pay a high-priced lawyer to defend your rights, then yes, you could preserve your rights in that fashion. If you don't have money in this American democracy, then you don't have rights, really, because you can't defend yourself. Well, sure, you could read a bunch of law books and try to defend yourself that way, but how realistic really is that? Especially when you're going up against the professionals who manipulate the law for a living, who spent years and years in college doing this. There are, of course, rare exceptions to this rule, where certain people have successfully defended themselves and their rights. But this is, this is not something that's commonplace. This is not something that every person has the ability to do. Do you have the right to travel? Well, I don't think anybody really has rights in America, period. You have privileges that are just waiting to be revoked. And even those privileges that you have are only there as long as you have the money to defend them. So I would argue that you don't really have rights in America. But let's look at these so-called rights. For instance, as I was just saying, the right to travel. Well, you can't travel by car unless it's conditional, unless you have a driver's license, unless you jump through all these state fees and hoops and legislation and red tape. Unless you do that, you don't have the right to travel by car. Now, do you have the right to walk? Well, yeah, you can walk. Can you hitchhike? No, that's illegal. So, can you walk down an interstate? No, that's illegal in most places, if not all. So, do you actually have the right to travel? I don't really think so. I think as far as getting around town, obviously, yes. But even then, if you look, quote, conspicuous, a Gestapo can stop you and ask you for your papers, or, as they call it, your ID. So you don't really, in the strictest sense, I don't think you really have the right to travel. You have the privilege that is waiting to be revoked whenever the state or the majority decides to revoke it. So now let's also look at something else. In child support cases, which can turn into criminal cases, if you don't pay child support, for instance, because maybe you get laid off, the company that you're working for goes under, you could be brought into child support mock courtroom and charged with violation of a court order, regardless of your inability to pay. Now, no free legal representation is afforded to you in child support cases, to my knowledge. And I'm actually someone who pays child support, and so I know this. So, is it really fair? No, because you are being charged with a criminal charge, and you are not being given free legal representation, and yet you are still being prosecuted. And they can even charge you with a felony for not paying child support, for whatever reason. So, the child support system is tyranny. There's nothing free about it. There's nothing fair, or there's no equality involved. There's no fairness and justice in the child support system, because again, you're going up against the state, which has a representative, and you do not. So, yes. Now, so I just kind of wanted to lay some of these things out on the table. I might do a part 2 to this video, or I might not. I probably will, because I could go into a lot more freedoms that you might think you have that you don't. But for now, I'm going to leave it here and maybe come back at a later date. I'll be looking forward to your comments, so please comment, rate, subscribe, do a video response if you wish. And if you're rational and not appealing to ridicule or whatever, I will, and if you're respectful, I will do a response. Thanks for watching this video.